Hello and welcome to QAC. My name is Nystar, and as I said in a previous video, I am now going to talk about the other part of my sexuality, for lack of a better word. So I am asexual, but I am also panromantic, but I also identify as biromantic, and I'd like to say how I came to identify as both of those today. So, this might be a long video, apologies in advance. So let's start with high school, I guess. In high school, I used to love anime and manga. Was all over the anime manga scene, and I loved reading fan fiction. And as embarrassing as this is to say, and it's really, really embarrassing, but fan fiction was my introduction into sexuality. Because I grew up in a really, really, really religious, maybe even sheltered, I don't know, really, really religious, maybe sheltered home, where sex, sexuality, anything even vaguely related was not talked about at all. I mean, at some point we had a really censored, you know, the birds and the bees talk with my mom. But yeah, aside from that, nothing. So yeah, fan fiction. Even before we got to the birds and the bees talk, I was reading fan fiction. So fan fiction was my introduction to sexuality. I guess you could say I was pretty naive for a long time. But anyways, within the fan fiction that I've read, I was really into yaoi and yuri. And if you don't know what that is same-sex relationships, whether they be of the romantic kind or beyond that. So I was really into yaoi fan fiction, and yeah, you would think, having known nothing about homosexuality, nothing whatsoever, the word had never even entered my vocabulary before this. So you would think upon finding my first yaoi fanfic that I would be like, what the hell is this, or something. But no, it was completely the opposite, you know. It was just like completely natural for me. Those two characters, it just made sense. There was no question in my mind whatsoever. And, you know, growing up in a very, very strongly Christian household, looking back on that now, it really surprises me. But at the time, it was just perfectly natural, yeah. So from there, I started to become gradually more and more aware of LGB things in general, outside of fanfiction in the real world. And I intentionally say LGB and leave off the T because at that time I was still completely in the dark about transgender and trans issues. So yeah. Gradually, and I mean gradually, over time, I became more aware and really, really, really supportive of LGB things and people and relationships and issues and stuff like that. But at the same time, even though I was becoming more and more aware, more and more outwardly supportive, excluding around my family, they still didn't know about any of this. Even though I had these things in my mind and was really supportive of them, nowhere during this time, or for a decade afterwards, nowhere during this time did it ever occur to me that, you know, any of this directly applied to or affected me. I was still very much stuck in heteronormativity. And if you don't know what that is, you know, the thought, the idea, the belief in society that, you know, man and woman, that's how it is. Man and woman, male, female, masculine, feminine, you know, everything revolves around that. That's just how things were for me, despite, I don't understand it. During all this time, I don't know. Even during this time, I wasn't aware that I was asexual. I knew that I had a low, non-existent libido, sex drive, but I didn't identify as asexual. But, sex was never something that was on my mind. And I had, during this time, throughout my entire life, very few crushes. And the crushes that I did have happened to all be on guys. Yeah. So yeah, there wasn't any red flags or anything in particular that, may have tipped me off sooner. Or maybe, because my memory, it really is shit, I can't remember back then, maybe I just limited myself, because I was in this go with the flow, man-woman mindset. I just didn't acknowledge any attraction that I had towards anyone else. But yeah, that's skipping ahead. Fast forward to when I'm 26, so this is 2012, 2011, 2012, yeah. So I'm in a relationship and stuff is happening that's causing me to be really self-reflective and thinking back over my life and my experiences and my feelings toward things. Suddenly, during this time of self-reflection, I became much more aware of my thoughts and my feelings towards everyone in general. I mean, I was noting things not specific to attraction at all, but since this video is about attraction, that's what I'm going to focus on. So, for example, and it would be completely random, I would note how I felt about someone who was riding on the bus with me, or someone who I saw walking up the street. I started to note that I did experience aesthetic attraction towards everyone. That was completely indiscriminatory of gender or sex. And I started to note when reflecting on past experiences that I did experience romantic attraction towards people indiscriminatory of gender. But still, these were just casual notes in my head when they happened. Oh, yeah, that did happen. And then I go about my day. I didn't sit down and focus on anything. It's just casually noting things. But then, one night, I was watching an episode of Being Human UK, and there was this one character, it was a one-off character just there for that episode. There was this one character where it was just like this giant light bulb went off in my head. I mean, suddenly there was this one character, and biologically female, and it was just like, wow. All of a sudden I noticed, wow, to this character, I experienced romantic attraction and aesthetic. And I don't know about sensual, but it was just, these feelings were so strong that for the first time I was just like blown away. It wasn't just casually noting something, it was just like, wow. And after that experience, that's when I went diving into the internet, researching everything, even reflecting like 1,000,000 times more, and seriously now, stopping and noting everything. And when I noticed this, and when I realized, really seriously, genuinely realized that, this attraction that I felt, again, not sexual in nature, but every other type of attraction that I felt, I think, I can't remember my entire life because this is crap, but I think has never been limited in terms of gender or sex. And having realized this, I started to look for a term to describe this, and I found bisexual. At this point, I wasn't identifying yet as asexual. So I was looking at sexual orientations. So I found bisexual, and I thought, yeah, that describes me, but I didn't think it was right. But I looked into it anyways. And what I found was the stereotypical bisexual equals sexual attraction towards male and female. So I went with that, and I didn't identify as bisexual. I kept looking. And I found pansexual, and I thought, wow, yeah, this is perfect. This is exactly what I feel. So from there, I identified as, because I found the term demisexual, I identified as a demi-pansexual or a demisexual pansexual. So I went with that for a couple of months, and yeah, this is in another video, but I stopped identifying as demisexual because that didn't fit right. So I now identified as asexual. So I went to romantic orientations and got the equivalent, panromantic asexual. But I identified with that for a while, but I went back and I looked back into bisexuality, biromantic. Being a linguistics major, I went back and looked at bisexuality, but that bi prefix I really got hung up on. I met some bisexuals who explained to me that bisexuality is not strictly, being sexually attracted to only males and females. There is no, for some reason, people these days insist on bisexual reinforcing the binary when it doesn't. There are many bisexuals who define bisexuality as being sexually attracted to the same gender as oneself, as well as to other genders than oneself. So the bi is same or other. It isn't male or female. And when people explained this to me, I thought, that makes sense. But being a linguistics major, I still was stuck on this bi prefix because, people get that stereotypical definition, that ignorant, I really think it's ignorant, definition of bisexual from that bi, thinking that it's male and female, that there are only two genders and bisexuals are only attracted to two. But that's not it. But even though I understood that because bisexuals explained this to me, the linguist in me was just like, bi, no, don't like that. Eventually I did get past that bi. And I did come to terms with it being same and other. So when I got past that, and when I could really accept the definition of being attracted to same or other genders, I can identify as biromantic now. And while I still think that panromantic describes me the best, because I still feel that even when defining biromantic or bisexual as same or other genders, there's still kind of a focus on, I feel like there's an implied focus on gender, even though there are bisexuals who like pansexuals, or there are biromantics who like panromantics, can see past gender and are attracted to anyone regardless of gender. I feel like pan, the prefix pan, stresses that more, and so that's why I identify first and foremost as panromantic and secondary as biromantic. But I can identify as both, and I do identify as both. But anyway, I wish that more people could better understand, better educate themselves as to what bisexuality and biromantic is, instead of just stopping at the bi, stopping at what they think it means. And not even just people, organizations. I wish everyone would better understand what these orientations, what these identities are, what they mean. I mean, yeah, it just pains me. It really pains me when people misdefine, misunderstand, misuse these terms. And anyway, I could do a 20-minute long video on this topic, but I won't. So yeah, let's just stop there. I identify as both, and that's it. Bye.